It was my 60th birthday when my son-in-law, Matteo, sent a message that made my hands freeze over the steering wheel. "Don't come home tonight. Trust me. Don't ask why." Matteo was never dramatic, never careless with words. So I listened. Instead of driving home, I sat in my parked car for nearly 20 minutes, staring at that message, feeling something shift deep in my chest. A quiet warning, the kind a man learns not to ignore after a lifetime of hard lessons. That night, I did something no one in my family expected. I transferred $5,180,000, every liquid asset I had, into a secured, irrevocable trust. No announcements, no confrontation, just silence and preparation. The next morning, my daughter Elena knocked on my door. Her smile was tight, her eyes were searching, and in that moment, I knew whatever Matteo had tried to stop had already begun. Quick note: this story contains fictionalized elements created for educational and entertainment purposes. If you feel comfortable, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. And please remember to take care of your health. Stay hydrated and get enough rest. But what my daughter said next changed everything. The morning after my 60th birthday, the air in my house felt heavier than usual. Sunlight spilled across the living room floor, touching the old wooden cabinet where my late wife's keepsakes still rested. I stood there for a moment, holding my coffee, listening to the quiet. Silence has a way of revealing truths that noise often hides. My name is Rafael Ortega. I'm an American citizen, born to Mexican parents, and I've lived most of my life in Tampa, Florida. For over 3 decades, I worked as a marine logistics supervisor at the Port of Tampa. It was honest work. Long hours, early mornings, storm seasons that tested both machinery and men. But it gave me something solid: stability, dignity, and the ability to provide for my family. Family was always my compass. My wife, Lucia, passed away 8 years ago after a short but fierce battle with cancer. Since then, I've lived alone in the same house we bought together in 1994. The walls still hold her laughter. The kitchen still carries the memory of her Sunday cooking. And on the shelf near the window sits her old brass sea compass, slightly worn, still pointing true north. I've kept it there as a reminder. When life gets confusing, direction still exists. Our only daughter, Elena, is 34 now. Smart, ambitious, strong-willed, just like her mother. She runs a small event planning business in Tampa. Over the years, we had our disagreements about money, about relationships, about how fast life should move, but love was never in question. At least, that's what I believed. Elena married Matteo Rivera 3 years ago. Matteo works as a high school history teacher, calm, respectful, thoughtful with his words. The kind of man who listens more than he speaks. From the beginning, he treated me with a quiet respect that felt genuine. We weren't overly sentimental, but there was trust between us. The kind built through small gestures, helping fix a leaking roof, sharing late-night coffee conversations, checking in without being asked. That's why his message the night before shook me so deeply. I was still holding that thought when I heard a knock at the door. 3 sharp knocks, controlled, intentional. I opened the door and saw Elena standing there, perfectly dressed, as always. But something was off. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Dad," she said softly, stepping inside without waiting to be invited. "Why weren't you home last night?" Her tone was gentle, but her gaze moved quickly, toward the hallway, the study, the cabinet where I kept important documents. Years of managing high-stakes shipping operations had taught me how to read tension, and right then, I felt it clearly. I gestured toward the living room. "Coffee?" I asked calmly. She hesitated, just for a second, then nodded. "Sure." As I poured her a cup, I noticed her hands. Steady on the surface, but her fingers tapped lightly against the ceramic mug, a nervous rhythm. Elena had always done that when something wasn't going according to plan. She took a sip, then looked straight at me. "Dad, we need to talk about your future," she said. "Matteo and I have been worried about you, living alone, managing finances. It's a lot." Her words were careful, rehearsed. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face, the same eyes her mother once had, now clouded with something I couldn't fully name. Concern? Pressure? Or calculation? I spoke slowly. "I appreciate the concern, but I've been managing just fine." She forced a small laugh. "Of course, but sometimes, planning ahead is the responsible thing to do." Planning ahead. The phrase lingered in the air like a warning. As she reached into her designer bag, pulling out a neatly organized folder, I felt a quiet certainty settle in my chest. Whatever Matteo had warned me about, it was unfolding right in front of me. And when Elena slid the documents across the table, I saw the bold title at the top of the first page. Petition for Guardianship. Elena kept her eyes on me as I flipped through the papers. The word guardianship sat at the top like a quiet accusation. I didn't react. Not outwardly. Years at the port taught me that when a storm rolls in, you don't shout at it. You read the wind. "These are just precautionary," Elena said, her voice soft. "In case something happens, memory issues, health complications. It's standard planning." "Standard," I nodded slowly. "And when did I start needing a guardian?" She hesitated. Only a second, but long enough. "It's not like that, Dad. Matteo and I just think it's better to prepare early than regret later." Matteo's name hung there between us. I leaned back in my chair and studied my daughter the way I used to study shipping manifests for errors. Something small felt misaligned. The petition wasn't empty. There were notes attached, typed evaluations referencing early cognitive decline, a doctor's name, a proposed court date within 45 days. 45 days. I looked up. "You already spoke to a doctor?" She swallowed. "We had a consultation. Just informational." Consultation. My hands stayed steady, but inside, something hardened. "I see," I said quietly. Elena relaxed just a little. She thought calm meant compliance, but calm can also mean calculation. I closed the folder and slid it back toward her. "Let me review this properly," I said. "Alone." Her fingers tightened around the leather handle of her bag. "Dad, there's no reason to delay. These things move faster when everyone cooperates." There it was, pressure. I stood and walked toward the kitchen window, looking out at the palm trees swaying in the Florida breeze. For a moment, I saw Lucia standing there years ago, wiping flour from her hands, laughing about something small and ordinary. Lucia had always said, "When someone rushes you into a decision, it's usually not for your benefit." I turned back to Elena. "Who drafted this?" I asked. She answered too quickly. "A firm in Clearwater." "Which firm?" She paused. Then she named one. I recognized it immediately. The same firm had been investigated 5 years ago for mishandling elder asset transfers. It never made national headlines, but in Florida's financial circles, people remembered. A flicker crossed Elena's face when she realized I hadn't missed that detail. "Dad, you're overthinking this." Maybe, or maybe I was finally thinking clearly. After she left, I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't confront Matteo. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I did something simpler. I logged into my home security system. I reviewed the camera footage from the previous week. Elena had visited twice while I was out running errands, perfectly normal on the surface. But on the second visit, she didn't go to the kitchen. She went straight to my study, and she stayed there for 19 minutes, alone. I leaned closer to the screen. She wasn't just sitting. She was opening drawers, taking pictures. I rewound the footage twice, then 3 times. And that's when I noticed something else. She wasn't alone. In the reflection of the hallway mirror, just for a split second, I saw a man standing behind her, not Matteo, taller, sharper posture, watching. I froze the frame, zoomed in, the image blurred, but the face was clear enough. Adrian Velez. I didn't know him personally, but I had seen his name before, on a complaint filed 2 years ago, involving fraudulent investment schemes targeting retirees in Naples. I sat back slowly. Guardianship wasn't the plan, it was the door, and someone else was already inside my house. I didn't sleep much that night. The image of that man, Adrian Velez, stood frozen in my mind, just like the paused frame on my monitor. His posture was calm, confident. The kind of confidence that doesn't come from innocence, but from experience. The next morning, I made breakfast as usual. Eggs, toast, black coffee. Routine has a way of keeping your mind steady when your world begins to tilt. At 9:12 a.m., my phone rang. Matteo. I let it ring twice before answering. "Good morning, Matteo," I said evenly. His voice was low, careful. "Raphael, did Elena come by yesterday?" "Yes," I replied. "She brought paperwork." A brief silence followed. I could almost hear him choosing his words. "Did you sign anything?" "No." A quiet exhale came through the line. Relief. "Good," he said. "Please, don't sign anything they give you. Not yet." "They?" I asked calmly. Another pause. Longer this time. "There's someone influencing her," Matteo admitted. "A man named Adrian Velez." I walked toward the living room window, looking out at the still street. "I know," I said. The silence on the other end turned sharp. "You know?" Matteo asked. "I saw him," I replied. "In my house. On my security footage. He was in my study with Elena." Matteo didn't speak for a few seconds. When he finally did, his voice carried a weight I hadn't heard before. "Then we're running out of time." The words settled heavily in my chest. "What are they planning, Matteo?" I asked. "They're trying to establish legal control over your assets," he said. "Guardianship is just the first step. Once they claim you're mentally unfit, they can manage your finances, your property, everything." I leaned against the wall, steady but cold inside. "And Adrian?" "He's done this before," Matteo said. "He targets families, finds a weak link, builds trust, then drains everything." I closed my eyes briefly, remembering Elena's forced smile, her trembling fingers on the coffee cup. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked quietly. "Why now?" Matteo's answer came without hesitation. "Because you don't deserve this, and because I made a mistake staying silent when I first suspected something." Before I could respond, a car door slammed outside my house. I glanced through the window. Elena was back. And this time, she wasn't alone. Adrian Velez stepped out of a sleek gray sedan, adjusting his jacket as if he were arriving at a business meeting. His expression was composed, almost friendly, the kind of face that could win trust in minutes and destroy lives in months. "Matteo," I said quietly into the phone, "they're here." His voice tightened. "Don't confront them. Stay calm. Let them talk. And Raphael, don't reveal what you know." "I never do," I replied. I ended the call and opened the door before they could knock. Elena smiled too quickly. "Dad, perfect timing. I wanted you to meet someone important." Adrian stepped forward, extending his hand with polished confidence. "Mr. Ortega, it's an honor. I've heard so much about you. My name is Adrian Velez. I specialize in financial planning and asset protection." I looked at his hand, then at his eyes. Steady, calculating, patient. I shook his hand firmly. "Asset protection," I repeated. "That sounds useful." His smile widened slightly. especially for someone with a legacy worth protecting. Elena relaxed beside him, clearly reassured by the smooth exchange. Adrian gestured toward the house. "May we come in? I'd like to show you a strategy that ensures your wealth stays in trusted hands." I stepped aside, allowing them in, calm on the surface, cold beneath. As Adrian opened his briefcase on my living room table, laying out glossy charts and legal summaries, I noticed a familiar logo on one of the documents, the same Clearwater firm Elena had mentioned. But there was something new. A draft agreement labeled Durable Power of Attorney, immediate effect. Not conditional, immediate. I looked up at Adrian. "You move quickly," I said. He met my gaze without flinching. "In financial matters, hesitation can be very expensive." I nodded slowly. "Oh, I agree," I replied, "especially when someone is in a hurry to take control." For the first time, Adrian's smile faltered, just slightly. And in that brief crack of composure, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just about my daughter's misguided trust anymore. This was a coordinated operation, and they believed I was the easiest part of the plan. Adrian's documents were arranged neatly across my living room table, each page aligned with almost surgical precision. Charts, projections, legal terminology. It was all designed to impress, to overwhelm, and ultimately, to persuade. I remained seated, hands folded, posture relaxed. Elena watched me closely. She was searching for hesitation, for confusion, for any sign that their strategy was working. Adrian tapped one of the pages with a polished pen. "Mr. Ortega, this structure ensures your assets are professionally managed. Given the complexities of modern finance and potential health uncertainties, it's a proactive safeguard." Health uncertainties. There it was again. I glanced at the document. "You seem very confident about my health, Adrian." He offered a courteous smile, merely planning for possibilities. In fact, Elena mentioned a scheduled cognitive evaluation next week. A responsible step. I slowly turned my head toward my daughter. "Elena," I said gently, "you scheduled a medical evaluation for me?" She clasped her hands together, forcing calm into her voice. "Dad, it's just a routine assessment. Many families do this. It helps avoid legal complications later." Routine. I leaned back, letting a quiet silence fill the room. Silence makes people uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people reveal more than they intend. Adrian broke the pause. "Once the evaluation is complete, and if the physician recommends support, this durable power of attorney allows Elena to manage your financial affairs immediately. Seamless, efficient, protective. Immediate effect." I picked up the document, studying the bold legal language. The structure was airtight, if I were truly deemed unfit. "You've prepared this very thoroughly," I said. Adrian nodded. "Preparation's the foundation of security." "Security for whom?" I set the document down carefully. "And what happens if I choose not to proceed?" Elena's expression tightened. "Dad? Why would you resist something that protects you?" I met her gaze, calm but unwavering. Because protection should never feel like pressure. The room grew still. Adrian adjusted his cufflinks, maintaining composure. "Of course, this is entirely your decision. However, delays can complicate matters, especially if there are concerns about cognitive stability." There it was again. The narrative, repeated, reinforced. I stood slowly and walked toward the cabinet by the window. Lucia's brass sea compass rested there, catching a sliver of sunlight. I picked it up, feeling its familiar weight in my palm. "My late wife used to say this compass never failed," I said softly. "Even in the worst storms, it always pointed true north." Elena shifted uncomfortably. Adrian watched me, calculating. I turned back to them. "Right now, my direction is very clear. Adrian smiled politely. And that direction is— I don't sign documents under pressure, I replied, especially those that take effect immediately. Elena's composure cracked. Dad, you're being unreasonable. We're trying to help you. I held her gaze. Help doesn't require urgency. Control does. Her eyes filled with frustration. You don't understand how vulnerable you are. Before I could respond, Adrian gently placed a hand on her arm. Elena, let's remain calm. Then he looked at me. Mr. Ortega, perhaps we should revisit this after your evaluation. Once the medical report confirms your condition, the process will be much smoother. Confirms your condition. The assumption was no longer subtle. I nodded slowly. That sounds reasonable. Relief flickered across Elena's face. Adrian closed his briefcase with quiet satisfaction. They believed the path was clear, predictable. I could almost see the timeline forming in their minds. 48 hours to the medical evaluation, a favorable report, immediate activation of financial control. As they stood to leave, Elena paused at the door. Dad, we're doing this because we care. I offered a gentle, measured smile. I know you believe that. The door closed behind them. The house fell silent again. I walked back to the table, picked up the copy of the evaluation appointment Elena had left behind, and read the details carefully. The physician's name, the clinic address, the scheduled time. Then I noticed something that made my pulse slow, not quicken. The evaluating physician had a history of professional complaints, 3 formal reviews in the past 6 years, all related to questionable competency assessments in guardianship cases. This wasn't just preparation, it was orchestration. I reached for my phone and dialed Matteo. He answered immediately. Raphael? The evaluation is set, I said calmly, but the doctor they chose has a reputation for delivering very convenient diagnoses. Matteo's voice hardened. Then we're closer to their endgame than we thought. I looked at Lucia's compass, still resting in my hand. Good, I replied quietly, because it means we can finally begin ours. There was a brief pause on the line. Then Matteo said, Raphael, there's something you need to know about Adrian, something I should have told you sooner. I stood still, every sense sharpening. What is it? I asked. Matteo took a slow breath. I've been tracking him for months, and your family was never his first target. Matteo didn't rush his words. That's something I've always respected about him. When a man speaks slowly under pressure, it usually means he's thinking several moves ahead. I started noticing patterns last year, he said quietly. Adrian Velez connects himself to financially stable families through relationships, business partnerships, romantic ties. He isolates the wealth holder, then introduces legal dependency. I stood by the kitchen counter, phone pressed to my ear, Lucia's compass resting beside me. And how do you know this? I asked. Another pause. Because a colleague of mine lost his father that way, Matteo replied. Not to death, to guardianship. Assets frozen, accounts drained through management fees and shell investments. Shell investments. The phrase felt mechanical, clean, efficient. How much? I asked. Just over $3.2 million, Matteo said. Gone in 18 months. I closed my eyes briefly. And Adrian? He was never directly listed, Matteo answered. He operates behind advisory layers, consultants, legal proxies. Smart, calculated, ruthless. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. Matteo exhaled slowly. Because at first, I wasn't sure Elena understood what she was stepping into, and I didn't want to accuse her of something she might not fully see. That answer carried weight. Too much weight for something casual. When did you become certain? I pressed. 2 weeks ago, he said. I accessed public court filings in Pinellas County. Adrian was listed in a civil suit involving elder exploitation. The case settled quietly. No conviction. But the pattern was there. The word pattern echoed in my mind. I need specifics, I said, calmly. Matteo lowered his voice. There's more. The physician Elena chose for your evaluation, Dr. Howard Pike. He's testified in at least 9 guardianship petitions connected to the same advisory firm Adrian uses. 9. Not random. Systematic. I leaned against the counter, absorbing the structure of it all. This wasn't an emotional mistake. It was infrastructure. What's the timeline? I asked. The evaluation happens in 48 hours, Matteo replied. If the doctor declares diminished capacity, Elena can file an emergency petition immediately. Once the court approves temporary guardianship, your accounts could be frozen pending review. Frozen. I looked at the compass again. They're not just testing my memory, I said quietly. They're testing my timing. Yes, Matteo agreed. And they believe you're unaware. Silence settled between us for a moment. Matteo, I said slowly, are you protecting me or investigating them? The question lingered. His response came steady. Both. There it was. A layered answer. Not evasive, but not complete. I've been documenting Adrian's connections, he continued. Financial flows, shared corporate registrations. I was planning to build a formal report. For whom? I asked. For the authorities, he said. If it came to that. If it came to that. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. Then we need evidence that stands in court, I replied. Not suspicion, not theory. Matteo hesitated before answering. There is something else. My grip on the phone tightened slightly. Adrian's primary vulnerability isn't financial, Matteo said. It's relational. He leverages emotional dependency. Once trust is secured, he accelerates legal control. Elena, I said quietly. Yes. The weight of that single word filled the room. She believes he's helping her build independence, Matteo continued. He's positioned himself as a mentor, an investor, possibly more. I didn't react outwardly, but inside, something shifted. More? I repeated. I don't have proof, Matteo admitted, but the communication frequency between them suggests a deeper influence. Influence. Manipulation rarely looks like force. It looks like guidance. I walked toward my study, sitting down at the desk Elena had once searched. The drawers were closed neatly now, but the intrusion still lingered in the air. Then we let them proceed, I said. Matteo paused. Proceed? Yes, I replied evenly. We attend the evaluation. We let Adrian believe the structure is intact, and we watch where he steps next. That's risky, Matteo warned. Only if we're unprepared, I said. There was a moment of quiet respect in his tone when he answered. What are you thinking, Raphael? I opened my laptop and began pulling up archived financial statements. I'm thinking, I said calmly, that if Adrian has done this before, he's left traces, and if he's moving quickly, it means he believes I'm already cornered. Outside, a storm cloud rolled slowly over the Florida sky. They're not planning for my weakness, I continued. They're counting on it. Matteo's voice lowered. And if they realize you're not weak? I glanced at the reflection in my dark computer screen. Then they'll escalate, I said quietly. A long pause followed. Then Matteo spoke, his voice almost cautious. Raphael, I didn't tell you everything yet. I stopped typing. What else is there? I asked. Matteo's next words changed the temperature of the room. Adrian isn't just connected to legal exploitation cases. He's connected to one suspicious death. Matteo didn't dramatize it. He never does. One of Adrian's former clients died 6 months after signing emergency guardianship papers, he said quietly. Official cause was cardiac arrest. but the estate was liquidated within 90 days. I sat very still. How much? I asked. Just under 4 million, Matteo replied. Transferred through layered management fees and offshore advisory contracts. Offshore. That word carries a particular kind of silence. Was Adrian charged? I asked. No, Matteo said. There was no direct evidence. Everything was technically legal. Technically. Legal doesn't always mean right. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling fan turning slowly above me. Florida air thickens before a storm, and I could feel the pressure building. What was the man's name? I asked. Samuel Ortiz, Matteo answered. Retired contractor, widower, lived alone. Widower, like me. How did Adrian enter his life? I asked. Through the man's daughter, Matteo said. Business mentorship, investment expansion, very similar pattern. Very similar. My chest tightened, not with panic, but with clarity. Elena doesn't see this as manipulation, I said quietly. She sees opportunity. I know, Matteo replied. That's what makes it dangerous. We ended the call shortly after. I spent the next hour reviewing public records, court filings, corporate registrations. Patterns began aligning like coordinates on a map. Adrian Velez operated through 3 advisory entities. Each dissolved within 2 years, each linked to estates that transitioned under guardianship review. Nothing criminal on paper, but nothing accidental either. Around noon, Elena called. Dad, she said brightly, Adrian mentioned you seemed hesitant yesterday. He'd like to schedule another meeting, just to clarify the benefits. Benefits. I kept my tone steady. I'll attend the evaluation first. There was a pause. Too long for comfort. That's fine, she said finally. It'll reassure everyone. Everyone. After we hung up, I opened my email. A new message had arrived. Subject line, Cognitive Support Plan. Attached was a PDF from Dr. Howard Pike's clinic outlining preliminary observations, before the evaluation had even occurred. Preliminary. The document suggested mild executive function concerns consistent with early cognitive impairment, consistent, with no assessment completed. I read it twice, then I forwarded it to Matteo. He called within minutes. They're pre-drafting the outcome, he said flatly. That means the evaluation is performative. Or predetermined, I replied. We both understood what that meant. Raphael, Matteo said carefully, if they secure even temporary guardianship, reversing it becomes expensive and public. I'm aware, I said. Silence again. Then Matteo spoke in a tone I hadn't heard before, less cautious, more personal. There's something I need to tell you, something I should have admitted earlier. I didn't interrupt. When I first met Adrian at one of Elena's networking events, I recognized his name, Matteo continued. I had already been reading about his patterns. I felt my pulse slow. You knew before he got close to Elena? I asked. Yes, Matteo admitted. I suspected him immediately. And you still let him into our lives? I didn't let him, Matteo said quietly. I stayed close so I could monitor him. Monitor? You mean you were investigating him? I said. Yes. How long? I asked. Since the night he mentioned your net worth casually over dinner, Matteo replied. He had numbers, specific numbers. That's when I started digging. The room felt smaller. You never told me, I said. I didn't want to alarm you without proof, Matteo answered. And I didn't want Elena to feel accused. I thought I could contain it. Contain? You married into my family knowing he might target us, I said slowly. Matteo's breath caught slightly. I married Elena because I love her. Adrian's presence just changed the stakes. There was truth in his voice, but also strategy. So this isn't reactive, I said. You've been building something. Yes, Matteo replied. Documentation, patterns, Financial tracing. I've been preparing a formal complaint package. For whom? I asked. For the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit in Jacksonville, he said quietly. The words settled into the air like a dropped weight. You're already in contact with federal investigators? I asked. Not formally, he clarified, but I've been compiling everything. I stood and walked toward the window again, watching clouds gather over the Gulf. Elena doesn't know, I said. No, Matteo confirmed, and she can't. Not yet. I turned back to my desk. So, let me understand, I said carefully. You entered this situation aware of the predator, you stayed silent, you gathered evidence, and now you're ready to escalate. Yes. And what happens to my daughter in that escalation? Matteo didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower than before. That depends on how deep she's chosen to go. Chosen. The word cut deeper than I expected. I closed my laptop slowly. Matteo, I said evenly, are you protecting my family or using my family to build your case? There was no immediate response, only the sound of his breathing. Then, very quietly, he said, I was hoping you wouldn't ask that yet. Matteo's silence on the phone lingered longer than I expected. I'm not using your family, he finally said. But I knew Adrian would eventually push for legal control. I wanted to be inside the room when he did. Inside the room. I walked slowly toward my study window, watching the afternoon light flatten across the lawn. And if I hadn't transferred the money into the trust? I asked quietly. Matteo hesitated. Then they would have moved faster. So he had calculated for both outcomes. You were prepared for me to fall, I said. I was prepared for Adrian to escalate, Matteo replied. There's a difference. Maybe there was, but preparation always carries intention. Raphael, he continued, I need you to understand something. Adrian believes the evaluation will confirm diminished capacity. Once that report is signed by Dr. Howard Pike, they'll file an emergency petition this Sunday. I know, I said calmly, and he thinks I won't contest it. Yes, I nodded slowly. Good. There was a brief pause. Good? Matteo asked. Yes, I replied. Because confidence makes people careless. That evening, Elena texted me. Dad, Adrian wants to take you to dinner tomorrow after the evaluation. Just the three of us. A fresh start. A fresh start. I replied with one word. Agreed. An hour later, another message arrived, from an unknown number. It was a digital copy of the guardianship petition. The filing draft had already been time-stamped, prepared for submission. Below Elena's name as petitioner, Adrian's advisory firm was listed as financial consultant. It wasn't just influence, it was structure. I forwarded the document to Matteo. He called within seconds. That filing draft shouldn't exist yet, he said. They're assuming the medical outcome. They've rehearsed it, I replied. Yes, Matteo agreed, and if they believe everything is aligned, Adrian will likely expose his next move during dinner. Which is? I asked. He'll propose asset diversification abroad, Matteo said. Possibly Cayman or Belize. He uses offshore leverage when domestic control feels delayed. I leaned against my desk, steady. So we let him speak, I said. Yes, let him outline everything. And what about you? I asked. Matteo exhaled slowly. I won't be at dinner. That caught my attention. Why? I asked. Because Adrian won't reveal full strategy if I'm present, Matteo replied. He still thinks I'm neutral, supportive, mild. Neutral, supportive, mild. You've played that role well, I said. I had to, he answered. I looked at Lucia's brass compass resting beside my laptop. Matteo, I said quietly, are you certain Elena doesn't know the depth of this? I'm certain she believes Adrian is building her independence, he replied. Whether she understands the legal consequences, I'm not sure. That uncertainty lingered between us. If this goes federal, I said slowly, she'll be implicated. Yes, Matteo admitted. The word was heavy. Later that night, I opened my financial dashboard. Everything was secure. The irrevocable trust had been executed cleanly. Over $5.18 million in liquid assets now sat protected beyond immediate reach. My primary accounts held operational funds only. I wasn't cornered, but they didn't know that yet. The following morning, I arrived at Dr. Howard Pike's clinic 10 minutes early. Neutral expression, steady posture. Elena met me in the lobby. Adrian arrived shortly after, offering a polite nod. The evaluation lasted 40 minutes. Routine questions, memory tests, spatial reasoning. I answered carefully. Not overly sharp, not overly slow. Just honest. When it ended, Dr. Pike smiled thinly. "We'll finalize the report by tomorrow morning," he said. Tomorrow morning. As we walked toward the parking lot, Adrian stepped closer. "Mr. Ortega," he said smoothly, "after dinner tonight, I'd like to discuss an international growth opportunity. Strictly advisory, nothing binding, yet." I looked at him calmly. "I look forward to it," I replied. Elena seemed relieved. Adrian seemed confident. But as he walked ahead of us, adjusting his tie in the reflection of his car window, I noticed something small, something precise. He checked his phone, and I caught a glimpse of the screen. An email draft. Subject line: temporary guardianship filing, ready for submission. Timestamped for 8 a.m. tomorrow. They weren't waiting for the report. They were timing the arrest of my independence. That evening, before leaving for dinner, I received a final message from Matteo. 3 words. "It's time, Raphael." Time for what? I stared at the screen, feeling the air tighten around me, and for the first time, I wondered whether Matteo's plan extended further than he had told me. The restaurant Adrian chose overlooked the Tampa waterfront. Soft lighting, expensive wine list. The kind of place where business decisions hide behind candlelight. Elena sat across from me, Adrian beside her. I noticed how naturally he leaned closer when he spoke to her. Subtle, guiding, almost protective, a familiar tactic. "Mr. Ortega," Adrian began smoothly, "after reviewing market volatility, I strongly recommend international diversification. Domestic legal structures are becoming unpredictable." Unpredictable. "That's interesting," I replied calmly, "given that you've already prepared domestic guardianship filings." Elena's head snapped toward me. Adrian didn't flinch. "I'm not sure what you mean," he said. I held his gaze. "The draft email. 8 a.m. submission tomorrow. Temporary guardianship." Silence fell over the table. Elena's face drained of color. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Adrian set his wine glass down slowly. "It's simply contingency planning." "Contingency? You drafted it before the medical report was finalized," I said evenly. "That suggests expectation, not contingency." Elena looked at him now, confusion spreading across her expression. "Adrian?" she asked quietly. He offered her a reassuring smile. "Legal timing matters. I was being efficient." Efficient. I leaned back in my chair, hands resting calmly on the table. "And Cayman?" I asked. "Or Belize? Which offshore jurisdiction were you planning to introduce tonight?" For the first time, Adrian's composure shifted. Barely, but enough. "You've done research," he said. "Yes," I replied. Elena looked between us. "What is happening?" Adrian's tone hardened slightly. "Mr. Ortega is misinterpreting strategic planning as malice." "No," I said softly. "I'm recognizing pattern." The word hung there. Pattern. Elena's breathing grew uneven. "Dad, you're scaring me." I turned to her gently. "I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to protect you." Adrian leaned forward. "From what?" From becoming the legal face of something you don't fully understand, I answered. He smiled again, but this time it felt thinner. You're making a mistake, Adrian said quietly. You think you're ahead, but you're reacting. No, I said calmly. I'm observing. A server approached, sensing tension. Adrian waved him away without breaking eye contact. You transferred the funds, Adrian said softly. That was unexpected. Elena froze. Transferred? I looked at her. Yes, into an irrevocable trust, before your petition could touch anything. Her lips parted slightly. Adrian leaned back now, studying me carefully. That complicates things, he admitted. Complicates, not ends. So, we adjust, he continued calmly. Guardianship still provides leverage. There it was. Leverage. Leverage for what? Elena whispered. Adrian placed a hand gently over hers. For stability. For structured growth. But Elena was no longer looking at him. She was looking at me. Dad, is this true? She asked. I held her gaze. I saw him in my study, on camera. Her eyes widened. Adrian's jaw tightened just slightly. You invaded my privacy, I continued, and you pre-drafted a legal control structure without my consent. Elena slowly pulled her hand away from Adrian's. Is that true? She asked him. He didn't answer immediately. That hesitation was enough. The air shifted. Adrian exhaled once, sharply. You don't understand how fragile financial positions can be, he said to Elena. Your father's resistance creates risk. Risk? For whom? She asked quietly. He looked at her now. Not warmly, not gently, but analytically. For all of us. Something broke in her expression. And that's when I understood something else. Elena hadn't seen the full blueprint. She had been shown only the promise, not the structure. Adrian turned back to me. You've accelerated this unnecessarily. Accelerated what? I asked. He gave me a long look. You assume you're the first obstacle I've handled, he said softly. A threat wrapped in politeness. I didn't blink. Then you should know, I replied. I don't collapse under pressure. Elena stood abruptly. I need air. She stepped outside onto the terrace. Adrian watched her go, then looked back at me. You've miscalculated, he said quietly. Have I? I asked. He leaned closer across the table. You think Matteo is protecting you. My pulse slowed. What about him? I asked. Adrian's smile returned, calm, deliberate. You should ask yourself why he entered your life exactly when I did. The words landed heavily. He knew about me long before you did, Adrian continued. Ask him why. I stared at him without reacting. Good night, Mr. Ortega, Adrian said, standing smoothly. This conversation isn't finished. He walked out toward the parking lot. Through the glass, I saw him step aside and make a call. Short, direct. When Elena returned, her face was pale. Dad, she whispered. Adrian just told me something about Matteo. I looked at her carefully. What did he say? I asked. She swallowed. He said Matteo didn't just suspect him, he targeted him. The word echoed in my mind. Targeted. Elena's voice trembled. Dad, what if Matteo isn't just protecting us? What if he's been playing his own game all along? Elena's question followed us all the way back to my house. What if Matteo targeted Adrian first? She asked again, her voice low, uncertain. The night air felt heavier than before. Tampa humidity clings to your skin, but doubt clings deeper. Inside my living room, I didn't turn on the lights immediately. I let the dim glow from the street lamps filter through the curtains. It felt appropriate. Half light, half truth. Elena, I said calmly, what exactly did Adrian tell you? She wrapped her arms around herself, defensive, confused. He said Matteo started investigating him months ago, that he inserted himself into our lives on purpose, that he married me to stay close. Married you to stay close. I absorbed the words slowly. And how did that make you feel? I asked gently. Her eyes shimmered. Like I've been manipulated by everyone. That hurt. Because confusion is worse than betrayal. Betrayal is sharp. Confusion is fog. I reached for my phone. Then let's remove the fog, I said. I called Matteo and put the phone on speaker. He answered immediately. Raphael? Elena is here, I said evenly. She heard something tonight. We need clarity. A pause. Then Matteo spoke carefully. What did Adrian say? Elena stepped closer to the phone. He said you targeted him first, that you entered our lives deliberately. Silence. Then Matteo exhaled slowly. Yes, he said. The word landed like glass. Elena's breath caught. Yes? Yes, Matteo repeated. I recognized Adrian's name before he got involved deeply. I stayed close, intentionally. You married me intentionally? She asked, her voice breaking. No, he answered firmly. I married you because I love you. But once I realized Adrian's pattern, I made a decision to monitor him from inside. From inside. Why didn't you tell us? I asked, calmly. Because exposure without proof is noise, Matteo said. I needed evidence. I needed documentation strong enough to survive federal scrutiny. Federal. Elena stepped back slightly. Are you working with the FBI? She asked. Another pause. I've been compiling a case file for months, Matteo admitted. Financial routing, shell entities, physician testimonies connected to guardianship abuse. You used us as leverage, Elena whispered. No, he replied. I used proximity. There's a difference. I studied the room carefully, my daughter trembling, my son-in-law breathing steadily through a speakerphone. Matteo, I said, why tonight? Because Adrian accelerated, he answered. The pre-drafted guardianship filing, the offshore transfer planning, he crossed the threshold. And what happens next? I asked. Matteo's voice sharpened slightly. The filing draft was bait. Elena looked at me, confused. Bait? I repeated. Yes, Matteo said. I accessed the Clearwater firm's server logs through public registry metadata. The draft wasn't just prepared, it was transmitted. Transmitted to whom? I asked. To a monitored advisory channel already flagged in an ongoing financial crimes investigation, Matteo replied. The room went very still. You've already triggered federal oversight, I said slowly. Yes, he answered. Elena's hands began shaking. Are we under investigation too? She whispered. Matteo's tone softened. Only if you proceed with the filing tomorrow. The weight of that statement pressed down hard. So, this dinner, this confrontation, you knew it would push Adrian to move, I said. Yes, Matteo admitted. You orchestrated tonight, I concluded. Silence confirmed it. Elena sat down abruptly. You both turned my life into a chessboard. Her words cut deeper than anything Adrian had said. I moved closer to her. Elena, I said gently, chess is played when someone else brings the board. She looked at me, eyes filled with tears. Dad, I didn't know about the death case, she said quietly. I didn't know about offshore accounts. I believed her. Adrian had shown her growth, independence, mentorship, not leverage, not guardianship, not control. My phone vibrated. A new message from Matteo. Agents are in position. I looked at the screen. Elena, I said carefully, Adrian is expecting to file tomorrow morning. He believes the path is clear. She nodded slowly. And? She asked. And if he transmits the final authorization tonight, I said, federal agents will intervene. Her eyes widened. Intervene how? Before I could answer, headlights swept across the front windows. A car door slammed outside. Then another. Footsteps approached. Elena stood frozen. I moved toward the door calmly. There was a knock, firm, official. When I opened it, two men in plain suits stood on my porch. One held a badge. "Mr. Rafael Ortega?" he asked. "Yes." "We're with the FBI Financial Crimes Division," he said evenly. "We'd like to speak with you regarding Adrian Velez." Behind them, I saw another vehicle parked at the curb. And in that moment, I realized something chilling. This operation had been active longer than Mateo ever admitted. I turned back toward Elena, and for the first time, I wondered, had my son-in-law been protecting us? Or building something far larger than I ever understood? The agents did not raise their voices. They did not need to. Within 24 hours, Adrian Velez was detained under federal investigation for coordinated financial exploitation, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit guardianship abuse. The temporary filing he believed would secure control over my estate became the digital trail that exposed him. The case did not unfold dramatically in public view. It moved through paperwork, subpoenas, sealed affidavits, quiet, methodical, like the tide, Dr. Howard Pike's prior testimony records were reopened. The advisory firm in Clearwater froze its operations pending review. Offshore communications were traced. As for Elena, she was not arrested, but she was interviewed. Thoroughly. She cooperated. She provided emails, contracts, messages she had once believed were guidance. When she finally saw the structure laid out in front of her, timelines, asset projections, guardianship drafts, her confidence collapsed. Not because she was malicious, but because she had mistaken ambition for security. Mateo testified as well. That was when I learned the full extent of what he had built. For nearly a year, he had compiled documentation on Adrian's network, patterns across counties, victim profiles, legal timing structures. He had never formally joined the FBI, but he had been quietly coordinating with an agent who specialized in elder financial crimes. He had not entered my life by accident. He had stepped closer because he recognized a storm forming. And yes, he kept that from me. That truth hurt. But hurt and betrayal are not the same. Elena moved back into my home for a while, not as a defendant, not as a child, but as someone trying to rebuild trust with her own reflection. We spoke long into several nights. "I thought I was building something," she once said quietly. "I didn't realize I was signing pieces of you away." I did not yell. I did not shame her. I simply placed Lucia's brass compass in her hand. "This," I told her, "is what your mother trusted when everything else felt uncertain. Direction doesn't come from urgency. It comes from clarity." Mateo eventually left Tampa, not because he was guilty, but because proximity had become complicated. Before he drove away, he looked at me and said, "I never intended to turn your family into a case file." I believed him, but I also understood something deeper. When danger enters your home quietly, sometimes protection must enter quietly too. Today, my assets remain secured, my autonomy intact, and my relationship with my daughter, though scarred, is honest. If there is a lesson in all this, it is simple. Never surrender control because someone convinces you that you are too weak to hold it. Age does not erase judgment. Experience does not expire. And love, real love, never requires urgency or secrecy. Thank you for staying with me through this story today. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I truly enjoy seeing how far these stories travel. If you made it to the end, rate this story from 1 to 10. Your feedback helps me create even stronger stories for you. And please note, this story contains fictionalized elements created for entertainment, educational reflection, and thoughtful discussion. If this story moved you even slightly, another one is waiting for you on your screen. YouTube believes you may enjoy it. Take care of your health. 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 Take care of your health.